About 12 years ago, I had an experience with sleep paralysis. As far as I can recall, it is the one and only time I have ever went through this. I was in bed asleep, and I woke up feeling a very heavy sense of terror. I was freaked out. I felt so scared. I felt as though I had had a really bad nightmare, but I could not remember anything about it. I know without any doubts whatsoever that I was completely awake. I lay there thinking, trying to figure out what my dream had been about, when I noticed that something was in the room with me. I somehow knew that it was over in the corner of the room, but I couldn't make it out. There was some light coming in from the window, so I could see around the room, but I couldn't see what it was. All I could really see was darkness. It wasn't like a shadow with a certain shape. It was just darkness. When I say that I felt a very evil presence in the darkness, I cannot exaggerate. It was very bad. Up until this time, I was just laying there. I hadn't tried to get up or move. But when I tried to raise my head up to look closer at the corner of the room, I discovered that I could not move anything except for my eyes. There was a huge weight that started pressing down on me, and it was getting difficult to even breathe. At that moment, I became even more terrified. I struggled and pushed, and then I thought, if I could just speak the name of Jesus, it would all go away. It took a lot of effort to get the word out. At first, it was like I was yelling as loud as I could, but no sound would come out. Finally, I stuttered the name Jesus aloud, and instantly the weight vanished and the entire room felt lighter. Just like that, the thing was over. A strange thing about all this, and it could very well just be a coincidence, is that just a few days, or maybe it was a couple of weeks, I can't recall for certain, but it was definitely no longer than that. Before this, I was involved in the digging of a grave, and we accidentally dug into an old grave that was unmarked. As odd as it may seem, I never really made the connection that my experience with sleep paralysis happened so soon after the cemetery thing until just recently. As I have said, it could just be a coincidence, but I think it was more. If you like the content so far, please hit that like button. It helps the channel a lot. Thank you. I believe in science and the Big Bang. I am also a Roman Catholic. I don't practice in the occult, witchcraft, or the dark arts. I don't use an Ouija board. I am not a crazy religious nut either. Sleep paralysis has happened to me, and I would like to say with 100% certainty that there are things that science cannot explain. I'm saying science is right in saying there is a time in sleep where a human body paralyzes itself so not to act out of dreams. Yes, this only makes sense. Can a person wake up before the effects are through? Yes. Why would a human experience of a negative presence in a room that lays on top of people be so common throughout history if there was not some merit to it and the spiritual world? Science tries to say it is the dream experience and my own fantasy, but I disagree, because why can't I have Angelina Jolie show up or someone with a check for $1 million? It is a spiritual entity in the room, and only those that have experienced this type of visitation can understand me. The first time it happened to me, the entity didn't walk on my bed, but more floated over me. Despite it not having a physical form, it was a darkness, a presence. It laid on my upper body, and I felt extreme pressure on my neck. It was choking me. I was very frightened and used all my energy to move, but I couldn't. I prayed in my head to Saint Michael, and the entity vanished as I continued to pray to God. The single most terrifying event of my life that brings tears in my eyes to talk about out loud, since it confirmed the spiritual. I told the spirit to get out and never come back when I could move again. A very important step I have noticed in many of these sleep paralysis stories I read online. Years later, I saw a dark presence that looked like a female. Definitely not the same scary negative being as before. It came over me and I felt the same inability to move. In my head, I prayed again and tried to move with all my might. She left very quickly, vanishing. This was not a violent occurrence, and since an event like this had happened to me before, it was not as scary. I told it to get out of my home and never come back. I had no desire to see it again, and only wondered what difference the entity had with the first visitor. The third time it happened, I was in my new home after living there for almost a year with 2 roommates. I saw a dark female presence over me while in my bed. Being experienced with this, I knew what would happen. I could not move, but felt the being getting closer and closer, a few inches from my face close. He left after I prayed more and used all my inner strength to fight it off despite my inability to move. It left towards the door, vanishing. The third situation wasn't violent, but it was scarier than the second time since the entity had much more of a physical form than the other 2 visits. I later read up on sleep paralysis and have not had another situation like it. May it be my own inner strength or something else. I do not foresee it happening again. I didn't tell the third being to live like I had before, since I was so tired after the event and went back to sleep. The morning after, the spirit almost felt enticing, and I almost wished she would visit again. Maybe a charm element she had to try and make me try and summon her. A succubus element possibly. It didn't come back to my bedside, and I never called out. My roommate, who lived right next door to me, continually got depressed and tired. I feel the entity decided it had an easier target to go, after our brief altercation, and fed on him for a while. He claims to not have had any experiences, but I noticed he was even more tired and extremely depressed as the days went by, claiming to not get good rest and sleep until late hours in the afternoon. I waited now, with more fear and no charm for any other spirit to arrive again in my room, but luckily none came. I did sense a negative presence in my new house, before the third incident that was definitely not that the same as any of the visits. You can feel when negative energy is around you when you're awake, and that to me is frightening since I have never seen a ghost while fully awake. My roommates and I were all stressed and they were depressed for different reasons. Girl troubles, deaths in family, money issues, school, etc. And I felt the negative energy was easy for a being of that sort to be attracted to and try to feed on it. I understand it needs energy to sustain itself, but I refuse to be a host for any entity of that nature. This isn't a vampire sucking your blood and then you wake up with powers and burning the daylight. This is a scary experience where your body is paralyzed and has to fight to not have its life energy taken through inner strength. The violence I felt the first time, I felt this experience was to raise fear and large amounts of energy out of me, while also attacking me, trying to kill me to get my life energy. A visit from a spirit, good or bad, would be more acceptable if I still had the ability to move. There's a difference of a spirit that's going to feed on your energy while you sleep, and a spirit that will say hello on its own unique way while you're awake. Noises, brief appearance, moving objects on its own, etc. I do have contempt and fear for the first experience ever happening again. I am only 12, and I had sleep paralysis last night, for the first time ever. In my dream, it was early morning and I was sleeping in my bed. I woke up suddenly. I tried to roll over in the position that I sleep in. I was on my back and tried to roll on my hip, but my body would not move. I tried to roll over again and I figured out that I was stuck. Then, I heard my floor creak, as if someone or something big was walking in my room. My flooring is different from any of the rest of the house. All of a sudden, my TV switched on. I thought that it was an electrical thing, so I kind of ignored it. Suddenly, my remote for the TV started floating like someone had picked it up. Whatever it was that was doing this was flipping through the channels on the guide. I tried to call for my parents, but my voice would not work. All I could get out was an inaudible squeak. I remember thinking in my dream that this is either a poltergeist or a demon. I have had other paranormal experiences in my room, and I am really freaked out. I pray frequently and believe in God strongly. I am in my late 40s. My mom is from the south and would suffer from sleep paralysis often. As a child, I remember she developed a sign of moaning loudly in her sleep when this would happen to her, and I would have to shake her really hard until she came out of it. She was always so exhausted when she would awake. She would tell me it was called the old hag or the witch on her back. This would happen most when she slept on her back or was very tired. One remedy she would use to ward this off was to place a sweeping broom at the foot of her bed before she went to sleep, or place a glass of water underneath the head of her bed. Another remedy was to call and curse the spirit out in her mind. I myself suffer from this quite often, mostly when I fall asleep on my back, which I try never to do. Today, at about 3:30 p.m., I fell asleep in my swivel office chair on my left arm over my bed while watching CNN on TV. My eyes opened to CNN and I could see and hear CNN, but I just could not move at all. My head would snap back every time that I tried moving it up. This went on longer than usual. I tried screaming in my head to wake myself up. I tried scratching my comforter. I tried wiggling my fingers. I could not move my feet, could not move anything. I felt moments away from breathing my last breath. I tried pulling my comforter off my bed. Sometimes, when I did manage to move my head, it would feel like it would violently snap back in position. I was so afraid that it was my last chance of life, and that someone would find me dead in my bedroom because I was running out of time to wake up. I woke up at exactly 5:15 p.m., extremely exhausted, scared, out of breath, and more tired than ever. Sometimes I'm afraid to go to sleep. I do think this is serious because you're so afraid when this happens that it feels like you can get a heart attack. My mom is in a nursing home now with Alzheimer's disease, so I can't talk to her about it anymore. Tonight, I will be placing a glass of water underneath the head of my bed. I have not been diagnosed with anxiety attacks, but sometimes I do have them and I do have a lot of stress in my life.